I'm actually unsure when it actually starts live streaming. Is it as soon as you almost press it, or is it like with a few minutes delay, 30 seconds delay?
I see the live icon.
Yeah,
there's definitely a few minutes, well, gosh, a few seconds delay, 5 at least.
Yeah, let's just jump into it. Hello, everyone. So for you listening, this is, or for everyone, this is a meeting about discussing what is needed within async API in order to better support non-JSON schema formats and everything around those terms, both from tooling and spec perspective. We had or before jumping into it, we are finishing off 5 minutes to 5 because we have a community meeting right after, so just a transition time there. But yeah, other than that, let's get into it. In order to keep the discussion kind of not having too broad of a discussion, I was thinking, or I suggested that we split it up into a discussion about references for non-JSON schemas, a discussion about adding support through inlining or what's already there, and then in the end talk about tooling and what needs to change, if anything, in those regards. But Heiko, you did some experimentation, I saw, or not even experimentation, but with protobuf. Do you want to quickly introduce that before we jump into it?
Yeah, it's a little bit off topic here.
Oh, it is?
It's off topic here. It's for 2.0.
Oh,
it's a new parser for Avo.
Then you mean for protobuf, right?
Yeah, protobuf, yeah, sorry.
But that's relevant for, it doesn't matter whether it's async API 2 or 3. Those are interchangeable in this discussion,
okay,
in my opinion.
Yep. Maybe Google helps me. I'm unable to share my screen.
Do I need to allow? There. Should be able to.
Okay. Yep. Share screen. Need a couple of seconds because new computer, everything is on different place. You mean the protobuf schema parser I created? Yeah, here you have new the possibility with async API 2.0. Have, as already known, the payload section of your message. It's of type any, so you can put in whatever you want. In this case, you have here in yeah.
Can you make the text larger, please? Because
sure.
I'm sure.
Yeah, in this case, you're having payload is of type string, and within the string, you will able to put in your protobuf schema. Now you can define it as protobuf type 2 or type 3, doesn't matter. The parser is able to handle both, so 2 and 3 are pretty similar, so it's not really breaking one. So it's independent what you put here, it's able to parse it. And what give it? Yeah, you have a parse schema. You can use it in UIs, whatever you want for. If you want to see a little bit more complex, I have here in real world example where you can see a pretty big protobuf thing he's in. The real world is much more, even much more bigger. You can see standard Google types are imported here. So this is supported. General import is not supported by this library, but support for Google protobuf and Google type is given. Yeah, this is included in the library. Custom imports are currently not supported. Yeah.
What happens when there's multiple messages? Which one is for the actual?
Yeah, here is just a single message. The library tries to figure out what is the main message in this case. You can see here the train message container is a real one because no one else is using it. The train run message is used in a train container and so on. So all messages below are used as sub-message type somewhere. So what the library does is try to figure out all the root types. And if there is not exactly one root type, an exception will be thrown.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I guess the parser you all know, but this is what the result is. So for unit test, I have it in here. I have a message payload. And yeah, within the payload, I get my object and everything inlined and dereferences. So I get a pretty deep, ugly to read object, but yeah, it's working. For visible, for direct UI, it's tested and looks pretty good.
And you have a discussion about donating it as well, right?
Yeah, I try to donate it as a standard parser. I want to add it to the React library because at the moment the React library has hard-coded the parser that are supported. For me, I have a requirement to visualize my schemas with the React library. Yeah, what I would do company internal is the reference thingy. I would add it as a fake ref for 2 with a pre-parser to inline it. But there's something I have to do.
All right, thank you. I think it makes sense if we take the discussion around inlining how it works with inlining it through strings. I think taking that discussion first makes sense, and then we can always go into discussion about the tooling and then references. How does that sound?
Yep.
All right. So first off, I guess my question is to spin it off. Do you find it useful, Heiko? Like,
yeah.
Do you think this makes sense to have it inlining a string?
It's the own possibility. If you write your schema manually, you would use it inlined. So you don't do it inlined, you use references. But for tooling and other options, you need inlined. For example, for the web UI, you need some pre-parser that inline everything into a single string or a single big element. Everything needs to be inlined to hand over to the web UI because the web UI cannot dereference, it cannot handle files.
Yeah, I think it's useful as well because it's a first step, right? So if we don't have $ref yet to work with protobuf or anything like that, you can still use, let's say you can prepare your YAML file. You can use other libraries and use your own syntax and replace chunks of a YAML file or a JSON file with content from another file. So you prepare the SNKPI file before you actually hand it over to SNKPI tools, right? So it's not ideal, but at least it's useful. It's already possible, and you can already so you don't have to type this long protobuf things there. You don't have to either copy and paste it there. What I'm suggesting is that you could actually use YAML or any other kind of templating format to include them, right? And then you end up with this YAML, right? So you don't have to do it manually. So yeah, I think it's really useful.
Yeah, but as soon as you make a server-side pre-parsement, some defined reference would be very helpful to have it in an outer file, and then you would be able to solve my 2 main problems here. The first one Jonas already mentioned is that I only am able to have one main type. With reference to a file, you can have an anchor or whatever pointing to the main type.
Yep.
This will solve the second problem. As you see, all the subtypes, all the enums here within here will be maybe reused between different messages. So if you point to a file, you can have all those enums, whatever, in an external file and use the imports, whatever you want. You can the tooling is able to be handled. Can design better protofiles.
I agree. I mean, what I was saying is that as a first step,
yeah, it's pretty good for a first step. Yeah,
it's really good. It's really good enough, and it's really useful. As a second step, I would say it's let's give it more visibility if you want, or let's give it more support by introducing the reference and support or important support as well. So both of them, right? So yeah, but it's a first step. So I think it's useful. And it will let us experiment as well on our side, experiment with the tools and how tools behave and stuff. So yeah, why not?
Just curious. So you plugged it in with the to the current parser and it worked?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I locally patched React UI and tested it there.
So you basically, as like in the custom schema parser for protobuf, you assume that payload is basically a string.
The custom schema parser get whatever it gets. It gets just the payload, and yeah, here I assume it's a string. Yeah.
Because like normally it's like from the schema format it shouldn't work, right? Because schema format should have additional information that it's a text. It's not JSON. It's not YAML. It's text, right? That's what spec says basically.
Not necessarily.
Any for payload. It don't have to be a schema object. This can be any.
Yeah.
It's because for JSON schema and async API schema object, we have something where you add a little bit where it says YAML or JSON to the schema format itself, like the value of it. But we also have something that doesn't define it, which means that the parser should automatically detect it. I think that's what Lucas is referring to.
Yeah, but like basically the spec says it like any is type, but the description says it must match the schema format, including encoding type, basically. So
But
for me,
but for protobuf, isn't it self-explanatory?
I don't think specs should be self-explanatory, but pretty precise.
But is there any other format that you can define it in than in the protobuf format? Or is it because you want like something like a string added to the schema format value?
I'm curious, where did you see this in the spec, Lucas? Because can you show it? Because
when you go to message object and you see payload field and type says any.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and then the description specifies what I just read it out.
It much message scale, right?
It's better website because links don't work on the GitHub README on the GitHub Markdown for some reason.
I think there's something disabled in GitHub because OpenAPI, they also have the same issue with their spec document.
I've added the link.
No, just check message
payload
object. Oh yeah.
Okay.
It can be anything, but default is a schema object. Yeah.
You need to,
as I understand it,
the
schema format defines what to expect in payload.
You need to use 2.6 ICO, not 2.0, because it's defined differently there.
Must match the schema format, including encoding type.
Not a string to be passed. In this case, it cannot be passed. It have to be.
This is just to be clear. It says for example, average will not be in line either as YAML or JSON object.
Yeah, but it's
should be in line.
ex-
Sorry, but because in this case, YAML or JSON, it's the same schema format. Let's say that it's the same format as the whole document, right? So it was I mean, I recall adding this, and it was precisely to avoid people to put things into strings when they can be JSON themselves, right? Or YAML themselves. But in this case, makes sense. But in the case of protobuf, you can't. So it has to be inside a string, right?
Inline it as object whenever you can, but in this case, it needs to be string. Yeah.
It has to be inside a big string, and that's it. And then it's up to the schema format to decide what to do with this, right? Actually, to the schema format now, to the parser, right? What to do with this? What to do with this string, right? So yeah.
Right. So we need to clarify that section.
We need to
more.
clarify.
Yeah.
It's not clear enough. That I want to remark that this is an example, right? And the intent of this example was, people don't inline Avro as a string, right? You can. It's already JSON, so you can actually add it directly without strings or anything. But I want to remark that this is an example, right? Not a mandatory, not a, let's say, how's it called? Not
a limiting factor.
Yeah, it is not a rule. Let's say the only rule that it says there, it must match the schema format, including encoding type. A protobuf is a string. If you think about it, everything is a string, right? Can be encoded as a string. So I will say it matches the encoding. So just it's inside the string, because if you think about it, we will never be able to do it differently if you think about it. Because if we allow people to paste it, but without the string directly, paste it directly there, then the whole document will not be a valid JSON document or a valid YAML document. So, so we will be breaking the whole file, right? We will have to build our own YAML parsers and our own JSON parsers and so on, which is a little bit too much, right? So obviously we have to put it into string. I'm all in for clarifying that paragraph, of course, for clarifying that when it's YAML or JSON, don't inline it as a string, just embed it directly, right? But yeah, for the rest, I would say it was never my intention actually to express the opposite. So yeah. But yeah, I can see that there can be confusion there.
It's also a bit twisting because, as it also states a little bit like the section before, it can be any type but defaults to.
Mm-hmm.
So already there it accepted, but then it negates it, or supposedly negates it. So it's like, yeah, okay. So we need to clarify the message payload section. I'm just writing it down to create issues afterwards. I think this is the first time that we are actually trying or should propose a new schema format to the table of supported or standardized, what's it called, like identifiers for schema formats. Mm-hmm. Because at the moment, technically it could be any value, and you could interpret it as being protobuf or whatever other schema format, right? It's not a suggested value inside the schema format at the moment. It's just that's what you decided to have, or what someone else did. It's whatever. But I feel like before we adapt that specific value, it needs to be specified in the spec, like being part of official tooling. But I might be wrong.
Yes, I understood it. As soon as it's in a spec, you need to implement it for all tools.
No, not necessarily. So on the table below, if you scroll down a little bit after this message section, you have a table there. This table,
this one.
you have two tables. So the first table is about the ones that you that everyone must implement. Every tool must implement.
Yeah, this is a requirement to support.
Which actually I was. We can change the. I mean, we can leave this recommended terminology there. I mean, it's recommended if you can do it, right? I was actually going to suggest that we remove RAML there, but RAML data types. But yeah, again, it's a recommended. It's a recommended one. If you want to parse it, go ahead and do it. So,
but it's also more in terms of, like, let's say that you have two tooling providers. In theory, they could both have their own value for what a protobuf schema is.
Well, so what I will do here is this string there should be using the, this application / whatever. It should be using the official MIME type for protocol buffers, but I'm not sure they have one.
Yeah,
so,
that is a nice little problem.
Yeah,
it's
so
not a real. It is.
So if they don't have it, yeah, we could add it there. Like, hey, our recommendation is that if you're gonna use these formats, stick to these MIME types, right?
Yeah.
Because that's all we know, right? And actually, these ones make sense. It's vendor, Google, protobuf, with the version included and so on. Okay, fair enough. These are not
Google for used MIME types. There are two, and this is the most common.
Yeah. So if Google is using it, I think everyone should be sticking to this, right? So, but yeah, I will make it explicit there on the spec document that if you want to use protobuf and you're implementing a parser or something, stick to these MIME types for the schema format, so all tools become interpretable, right? Because as Jonas said, like, if we're gonna build this with this MIME types, and someone else is gonna build schema format protobuf directly, then it's not gonna work, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. But again, as recommended, right, as a convention thing, right? Because this is not an official one either. So yeah.
I agree.
I think OpenAPI had the same problem, if I'm not mistaken, and probably I think Avro had one. They registered the MIME type. So yeah.
Yeah, but that was because of references, if I recall correctly, because they are using it, or at least on the JSON schema side, they're using it for remote references as well. So the return MIME type of, like, when you make that request should be upheld. In our case, it's basically, as far as I can tell, it's just an identifier for whatever is specified within the payload. So it's not that deep of a conversation to have in our case, I don't think.
Yeah, no, we're just using this because it's like, it's supposed to be the, let's say, the official or adopted MIME type, which could serve as the identifier as well. Actually, MIME types are identifiers at the end. So yeah.
So there's a Stack Overflow, one Stack Overflow question about the same, and they link to some expired proposal to have application / protobuf. But yeah, I would say, like, we should not worry much about it. When we will have PR open, we have one TSC member from Google. We can ping Jeremy to jump in and say, like, because he also, I think some time ago, he was talking about protobuf. So we can always ask him.
And also one thing, sorry to interrupt, but if someone else uses another MIME type, another schema format, let's say, and this becomes a problem, we can add ours to this list, this other one to this list, right? So our tool will become interpretable. Problem is that the other tool will not become interpretable with what our tool produces, right? But yeah, that should not be a problem. Should not. We can always ping people and tell them to please adopt this, right?
I don't have anything else for the inlining thing, I think. Not sure if you guys have.
No, I think we just need to clarify some things, and that's it. Specifically for version 3, right? So at this point in time, I will leave it so open for version 3, so widely open that, and we don't get very specific at anything. So that this will be a valid thing. I think it is, but yeah, to make it clear that it's still a valid thing. And then if at some point we want to become more strict, then we can become more strict, and that will not be a breaking change, right? So, because I will be careful with becoming too strict now, because it's too early, I would say. I will experiment a little bit more with this, and then I will become stricter afterwards, because that's always easier.
Yep. So does this approach work for XSD files as well, for example?
Yes, it should.
Yeah.
I don't see any problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the
So
same
all we need-
restriction, the XSD should only contain a single root type.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing. We can always, I mean, this is up to the schema parser, right? To the tool. The tool can put their own rules there as well. Like, yeah, I'm gonna parse it, but you have to give me one root node, or as well as, for instance, yeah, I'm gonna parse it, but I'm not gonna parse imports, for instance, because I don't support it. That's also valid. I mean, it's not ideal, but it's might be that the tool is not mature enough yet, right? So, but that's not wrong per se, right? Specifically when talking about XSD and protobuf, which are very early stages for us, I will be happy with introducing that early support for this, for the schema format, and of course telling people like, hey, this is the support here is limited, right? So careful, right? So use at your own discretion, right? And then it will improve, of course. But,
yeah, I guess import I will add it with one of the next steps, but yeah, here is the main problem. The parser is part of the React UI, and in React UI you don't have the node file system library and need to build in some switch or similar. So that is the parser is saying, hey, I'm in a React UI, I cannot handle imports, and if the parser is running in Node.js, it can handle the imports. So yeah, needs to be done. Will be done soon.
yeah, I think it should be part of the parser itself. Like the parsers will be complaining that there is some unsupported stuff there. Maybe failing, or maybe just triggering some warnings or something.
My point to that problem is that you are taking the wrong approach, actually. Or that's just my personal opinion. I don't think that the UI should in any way or form understand or understand external files references. I think that you should bundle your files before you actually pass it to the UI library.
Yeah. So
Of
React,
course, it becomes a bit of a problem when in terms of Studio, for example, or platforms where you have multiple files and you need to reference them. But I still think that once you pass it to the UI library, you should bundle them beforehand and then give it to the UI.
Totally agree, but the Async API parser is also part of the UI library. So the same code is running in the UI library as in the command line library. And in the command line library, you have the opportunity to handle imports, and in the UI, you don't have it. If there is still an import, it was not unified before, you need to throw an error.
but
More tooling issue.
But parser is not part of the UI library. It's a dependency. I mean, the UI library, it's using it as a dependency to parse the file, to read the file, actually to read it, right? But it's another tool, right? So it's
but in this case, the parser is running in the web browser.
Sorry, say again.
In the case of the React UI, the parser is running in the web browser.
Yeah.
But I don't understand the problem, I think.
Yeah, as soon as the parser is running in the web browser, it cannot dereference. So in this case, you need to throw warning, error, whatever, and tell the user, hey, please unify it before you paste it.
Okay, gotcha. You're right. So you're basically asking the parser to, or the React library to understand that it cannot handle remote references.
Yeah.
And throw the correct error when it
but that's still not the case. I mean, from the browser, you can still handle remote references. Why not? I mean, that's completely possible. The thing is that, of course, it cannot be a file.
Yeah, file-based remote references need to throw an error to the user.
Yeah, the thing here is that constraint that you find in the browser, not being able to handle file references, for instance, it's just one kind of constraint. Like, but it's no different. For instance, if I'm inside a VPN, right? If my files are inside a VPN, and I'm not connected to the VPN, these remote references over HTTP are going to fail anyway because I don't have access to these files. These are just constraints of the environment, right? You should just get the error that you're getting. You're getting whatever error, right? You're getting whatever whatever thing. I tell you that no, I cannot resolve file column blah blah blah. Of course not. You're in the browser, right? Now for Studio, for instance, Studio could be smarter there and say, okay, so whatever I see that it's using file, I'm gonna just we're gonna add support for multiple files on Studio at the same time. So if I see file, I'm gonna just point to the other file that I have open here in Studio, right, on my project. So in the case of Studio in the browser, it could be done like this. But then what you
so you suggest for the async API parser providing some kind of file getting API that can be used from the, for example, from the protobuf schema parser to grab its includes.
Wait, so what I mean, just a second. So what I mean here is that the React component in this case should get a completely dereferenced file, a bundled version of the file, right? Not the ones containing the $refs or anything, right? But that will be not just with protobuf, that will be with JSON schemas, right? Because it could be a file reference, or it could be an HTTP reference to something inside an internal network or something. So yeah. So what I mean is that the UI libraries will get everything bundled together, right, as much as possible. And then the thing is that the parser, when the parser is executing, right, it will be trying to fetch these references, right? So what I mean here is that, for instance, if you're in the browser, like in the case of Studio, Studio could be hijacking these references, right, and replace it transparently, right, so replace them by references to something Studio has in memory, right? So you don't have to worry and you don't have to change your file, because your file will work on your disk, but it will also work on the browser. So you don't want to be changing references just because you're in the browser and so on. But that's a problem. That's a concern on Studio. That's something that Studio has to handle, not even the parser, not even the UI library, right? It's something about Studio itself, right? That the problem is that Studio is in a browser. That's the only problem, right? When you generate the documentation using generator, HTML documentation, you don't have this problem because the parser is executing on the server side, like outside the browser, right? On the command line in this case, or in another script using Node.js. So you're not going to have this problem. You're not going to have the limitations of the file system and so on the browser. You're going to probably find others, but not this one. So, so what I mean here is that this is a different concern. Like when you it's not about the UI library. The UI library, it's actually not resolving the references. It's the parser itself, right? So the UI whenever the UI library wants to render the documentation, it's already the reference, right? Everything is already dereferenced. So I don't think
just to clarify that Studio should not hijack reference.
I mean, it's an example.
But in the end, it should be again parser stuff. The parser should allow you to provide a custom code that can do something with the reference or do some defaults like it already does. Like you can pass a base URL, for example, for the references, so it reads from a specific server. And Studio, it's just using this functionality, but it's not.
Yes, but I mean, it's not the concern of the UI library, of the React component, for sure. That's what I mean, because the React component is not only being executed in the browser. That's my point, right? It's also being executed and used on Node.js when you use the async API generator, right, outside the browser. So the React components should not understand anything about the references, just a plain document, bundled document, and nothing else. So whatever you see on the browser, the problems you see in the browser is a problem of Studio. It's a problem of the parser, maybe. The functionality then can be discussed. It can be in Studio, it can be in the parser. But that's for sure not a problem of the UI.
But the async API parser should provide to its schema parser plugins, or however you call it, some kind of file resolvement mechanism. So not every schema parser should bring this by its own. Would be, my opinion, would be a nice feature for the async API parser to provide the file resolver. Yeah. You can put in a URL, in a relative path, whatever, and
that's right there. So the parser accepts file resolvers. You can use file : / and you can point to file.
Yeah, sure. Within my library, I cannot use it. Within the proto schema parser, I'm unable to use those functionality. This is what I mean.
That's weird.
Or maybe I don't know how to.
I don't know. We can check this afterwards. But yeah,
just to clarify, so you can't reference a document. Basically, that's what you're saying.
What I need here is some kind of callback to say I found an include in my proto file, and now I need the file, the content of this file. Please callback resolve me the file.
Okay, so that's different. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you want resolving functionality inside the schema parser, so you can use it with the keyword of protobuf.
Yeah, and I want not to implement it on my own.
Because
as the default URL prefix and things like this, I don't want to.
But that's definitely
Remember, you can use an external library for it as well.
Yeah, sure, but then we have 2 schema parsers with 3 external libraries, and
Well, it might even make sense to use two different schema, 2 different libraries on the 2 schema parsers, because in your case you will want to probably, I'm not sure, but I haven't checked the details, but probably you want to have a library that understands protobuf and how to resolve proper protobuf.
Just get some URL or some relative path and need the file content.
Okay. If that's the case, then a fetch will work. But I understand it. Okay, but that's completely a different discussion. Also, this is that's a feature for the tool itself. Yeah, I agree with that. This could be somehow structured.
Just for reference, Heiko, that's the library that the parser is using.
Okay.
And it might not even provide you that function, like that API that you're looking for, because it handles, like, we only use something like a root dereference stuff. And it's very JSON-ish open API schema ref related or JSON reference related. So it might not work for your specific use case.
Okay, I'll have a look. Thanks. Okay, do we have time? This one here?
Library Dennis shared is actually the one taking care, like reading the $refs and making sure that it will be replaced by the actual remote thing, right? And in line and so on. So yeah, it understands JSON schema or JSON reference if you want. But in your case, it's even simpler than that. You just want to fetch something remotely and replace it on your protobuf document, or inject it, not replace it.
Yeah, for 3.0, I proposed the schema format thingy to have non-JSON schema things in the schema section. And here, I don't know. In the last call, we discussed about I introduced in components JSON schema. And we have also here schema, and schema says, okay, my schema is
Heiko, just to stop you, I don't think this is relevant for just discussing non-JSON stuff. This is very relevant for spec 3.0 specific changes.
Yeah.
So I don't think we should discuss this in the meeting.
Okay.
But feel free to add it to the agenda for spec 3.0. Just to keep it on track.
This one is very 3.0 specific because it's about current spec. Yeah,
because it's not really related to how like new schema formats or how you define the payload or schemas. So that's only relevant for the structure of spec 3.
Okay, so in this case,
and it's not just for non-JSON schemas. It's also the case for Avro. So Avro will still benefit about it, right? So it's not about non-schemas; it's about other schemas, every other schema.
Okay, then yes, referencing. Yeah, this is also, I guess, 3.0 thingy.
Yeah.
But yeah,
or 3.1. It's more related to 3.1 or sometime in the future.
But yeah, as soon we support external files, we need to have support for it. It's gone.
Well, Heiko, maybe I'm thinking now, I'm just thinking out loud here. Like, if we manage to do this inline thing with protobuf and you implement support for import on protobuf on the parser, then people could just type their syntax proto3 and a single import, which is importing the remote file, and that will work, right?
I guess. Yeah.
It's such a hack. Oh my god.
It's such a hack, but it will work. Actually,
it should work. Yeah.
Just giving you ideas in case you want to use it in the meantime, right?
Yeah, but no, your main message need to be defined directly.
But that's how the parser is working now. The schema parser. You know what I mean? If you handle the imports first and then try to find the message, you will find the message there. Because you already.
Yeah, it's not how protobuf is designed. Everything you imported will only be used partially, so you need to reference it. It's within here. Because within those types, you will find about 15 main types that can be used directly, but no one. Yeah, why only use the date time?
Yeah.
So that's not how it's designed.
Include, like PHP, it's not like PHP include.
No.
It used to be like pasting the code there.
No.
Okay.
It's a small linking and library of tools that can be used, or types that can be used.
We almost solved the problem.
Yeah. Sorry, you don't.
Can we bring protobuf community to add something like this, like include, so we don't have to do it?
Yeah, sure, you know the guy from Google, just do it.
We actually had some people in the first conference. So yeah, I think
let's be serious again. I'm still saying we need a real external reference or complete external protofiles.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I think we have 5 minutes left. Instead of getting into it, the next topic, I'm not sure whether it actually makes sense. So
No,
maybe
sure.
maybe we should conclude this one, and I'll schedule another meeting as well for continuing the discussion, both for tooling and reference. So just to clarify some of the things that or actionable items that we can take. We need to clarify more about the message that payload property, that it, in terms of these schema format and encoding types, that it should be clear that it's not too limited. That's one of the changes that need to happen in the spec. We also need to add the protobuf schema type or schema format value as an official value, so we can standardize the tooling around those values. So that needs to change in the spec itself, add it to the table, basically.
And speaking about it, I will even add XSD as well, taking advantage already of the change. Let's just do it.
I would probably do it in 2 PRs just to keep the discussion whatever clear, but yes, I agree. Then we talked about smarter errors for...
Just wait. Are we talking about 2.7 or 3.0?
Technically 2.0?
No, I'll do it on
2.7. 2.0, you said?
2.7.
2.7. Oh.
I mean, it's not related to, like, it's not a breaking change. It could go in 2.7. It could go in 3.0.
That's another thing. Are we going to have 2.7?
Why not?
Do we want to have 2.7?
Sorry?
Do we want to have 2.7, or do we want to just include everything on 3.0 and forget about the other one? Because, oh no, yeah, yeah. And I forget about it. There's a release before 3.0.
Why for? But do we have any changes?
I'm not sure.
I mean, there's one that I have to complete about the specification extensions, because that was unclear and we have to release it because there's a change. So that would be one candidate for April. Yeah. And this could be another one.
I would also like to mention that for clarifications and patches and things like this, we could release 2.6.1 like immediately. We don't have to wait for the release month.
Yeah, but like from my perspective, like that's something to discuss in the other PR, but like for me it's a feat, because there was like there was no clear mention of it, so it's basically something that we now explicitly in spec say that specification extensions are now on every binding. So it's it's not it's not a patch.
So to answer the question of whether it's for 2.7 or whether it's for V3, whoever does the change.
Depends on the champion.
Yeah.
I vote for 2.7.
Sure. Go for it.
That clarification, I mean, could be done on 2.7, but who cares? Like, the life of 2.7 or the maintenance of 2.7 or of version 2 is going to be short, right? So we're not going to continue 2.x. So who cares?
So 1 more minute. So just to conclude, we talked about some local references and error codes as well for tooling, but we're probably going to talk more about that in the next meeting as well when we talk about tooling. Any last remarks from anyone before finishing off? All right. I'm gonna write a message in Slack suggesting a new scheduled time, probably next week or next week again. Heiko, you're on holiday, right?
Yeah, I can join, but only with smartphone. So someone else needs to share.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fine. But let's see. I'll propose some times and let's take it from there. All right. Thanks everyone for participating. See you next time.